What if I told you that Queen Camilla just questioned Prince Louis's right to the throne, sparking a royal crisis that threatens to shatter the monarchy's unity? In a shocking revelation, Prince Louis has reportedly confided that Queen Camilla privately told him he might not truly be of royal blood, an accusation that strikes at the very heart of the line of succession. For generations, the British monarchy has guarded its legacy with unyielding tradition, but now, whispers of doubt threaten to unravel its stability. Is this a strategic power move by Camilla, or a revelation that could shake the foundations of the royal family? Today, we dig deep into the palace whispers, the secret meetings, and the explosive family fallout that could change everything. Stay with us, because the truth behind this royal scandal is far more. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The whispers began as mere murmurs in the grand halls of Buckingham Palace, rumors, barely audible, carried by the hushed voices of palace staff and whispered behind closed doors. But those whispers soon grew louder, swirling through the gilded rooms and echoing in the corridors of power. The catalyst? A single, shocking revelation from one of the youngest members of the royal family, Prince Louis. According to insiders, the young prince had confided in close family members that Queen Camilla had questioned his very right to the throne. "She told me I'm not really a royal," he reportedly shared, his young eyes wide with confusion and hurt. The revelation was like a lightning bolt through the monarchy, sending shockwaves from the palace walls to the streets of London and beyond. The idea that Camilla, now queen consort, would question the legitimacy of Prince Louis, the son of Prince William and Kate Middleton, was unthinkable. For many, it was the ultimate betrayal. An accusation that threatened not just the boy's perception of his own heritage, but the stability of the royal line itself. But how could such a conversation have come to be? Insiders paint a vivid picture of a chilly encounter during a family gathering at Sandringham. The event, intended to be a private affair, was said to have been marked by an underlying tension. Guests whispered about the strained dynamics between Camilla and Kate, tensions that had only grown since Camilla's ascension to queen consort. According to those present, the day had been marred with awkward silences and forced smiles, the sort of strained politeness that hinted at deeper fractures beneath the surface. It was during a quiet moment, when the adults had wandered off for tea and the children were left to play, that Camilla reportedly approached Prince Louis. Her demeanor, described as uncharacteristically stern, seemed to unsettle the young prince. Witnesses claim she knelt down to his eye level, her voice dropping to a whisper as she spoke. The exact words remain unconfirmed, but what followed was undeniable. Louis ran from the room, visibly shaken, seeking out his mother with tears welling in his eyes. Kate Middleton, fiercely protective of her children, was said to have been livid. Those close to the Duchess of Cambridge describe her reaction as uncharacteristically explosive. Kate, known for her poise and grace under pressure, reportedly demanded an explanation from William, who himself was blindsided by the revelation. Within hours, the rumor had spread through the palace like wildfire, igniting a flurry of behind-the-scenes meetings and hushed conversations. For Camilla, the fallout was immediate and severe. While she denied the allegations, claiming her words had been misinterpreted, the damage was done. The idea that she would question the legitimacy of a child born to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge was enough to spark outrage not only within the family but among royal watchers and the public at large. Accusations of manipulation and envy began to surface, with some speculating that her comments were part of a larger scheme to undermine William and Kate's influence within the monarchy. But this was no simple misunderstanding. The implications of Camilla's alleged comment reached far beyond mere family squabbles. If there were any truth to the doubts she cast, it would mean that the line of succession itself was in question. The ripple effect could be catastrophic, not just for the immediate family but for the monarchy as a whole. Questions of legitimacy are not taken lightly within royal circles, where bloodlines are meticulously recorded and safeguarded with a level of scrutiny reserved for the highest echelons of power. The press, naturally, latched onto the story with fervor. Headlines splashed across major publications, each one more sensational than the last. Camilla casts doubt on Prince Louis's bloodline, royal rift. Camilla questions Louis's right to the throne, and crisis in the palace. Prince Louis's royal status challenged. The coverage was relentless, with royal commentators dissecting every detail, every potential consequence, every whispered word from unnamed palace insiders. For William and Kate, The public spectacle was nothing short of a nightmare. The Duke and Duchess, who had long sought to shield their children from the brutal glare of the media, found themselves thrust into the center of yet another royal controversy. And while the palace issued its standard response, neither confirming nor denying the allegations, the silence did little to quell the storm brewing outside their gates. Behind palace walls, the tension was palpable. Meetings were held in secret, away from prying eyes and curious ears. Advisors to the royal family were summoned, each one tasked with assessing the damage and formulating a plan of response. Some suggested a firm denial, a united front to dispel the rumors swiftly and decisively. Others, however, advised caution, warning that an overly aggressive response might fuel the controversy further. In the end, the palace chose silence, a strategy that had served them well in the past, but one that now seemed to stoke the flames of speculation. The narrative only grew more complex as insiders began to leak additional details. According to sources close to the family, this was not the first time Camilla had expressed doubts about William and Kate's children. Allegations of snide remarks and whispered questions about the children's behavior, appearance, and even their mannerisms began to surface. The whispers painted a picture of a woman quietly questioning the legitimacy of those who stood in line before her own family members. An accusation that, if true, could shatter the fragile peace within the monarchy. Public opinion was swift and unforgiving. Social media platforms were flooded with support for Prince Louis, with hashtags like #StandWithLouis and #HandsOffLouis trending for days. Memes depicting Camilla as a wicked stepmother spread like wildfire, while messages of encouragement and solidarity poured in for William, Kate, and their children. The people, it seemed, had chosen their side. Royal commentators speculated endlessly about what this meant for the future. Some suggested that this could spark a deeper rift within the monarchy, one that might not be easily mended. Others wondered if this would be the final straw for William and Kate, prompting them to distance themselves even further from the shadow of Buckingham Palace. The idea of a split, while drastic, was not entirely unthinkable. William and Kate had long been known to prioritize their children's well-being over royal tradition, a stance that many believed could lead to dramatic decisions if pushed far enough. And yet, despite the public outrage, the palace maintained its silence. Statements were issued that spoke of unity and respect, of family bonds that were unbreakable. But behind the scenes, insiders whispered of growing tensions, of sharp words exchanged behind closed doors, of a family divided not just by words, but by ideals. The question that lingered, unspoken yet undeniable, was simple. Could the monarchy withstand another scandal of this magnitude? With Prince Louis's future now under a cloud of uncertainty, the very fabric of the royal line seemed frayed, stretched thin by whispers of betrayal and questions of blood. The stakes had never been higher. For the royal family, the path forward was fraught with peril. For Prince Louis, it was a journey of self-discovery and, perhaps, redemption. And for Camilla, it was the beginning of what could be her most challenging chapter yet. One that would force her to confront not only the whispers of doubt, but the fierce loyalty of those who would fight to protect the next generation of royals. The truth, as it so often does within the walls of Buckingham Palace, did not come gently. It came crashing through the delicate veneer of royal tradition, shattering the image of unity and harmony that the monarchy had so carefully cultivated. The revelation began quietly, whispered among palace aides and passed through the hushed corridors of Kensington Palace, but its impact was seismic. Prince Louis, the youngest son of Prince William and Kate Middleton, had confided a startling secret to his parents, one that threatened to upend the carefully constructed image of royal lineage. According to palace insiders, the confession came during a rare moment of privacy at Kensington Palace. The family had gathered for a quiet evening, the children playing near the fireplace as William and Kate shared stories of their own childhoods. It was during this innocent exchange that Louis, his face flushed from laughter, suddenly grew quiet. His expression changed, his brow furrowed as if contemplating something too heavy for his young years. Kate was the first to notice, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder and asking softly if he was all right. That was when Louis looked up, his eyes meeting his mother's with a seriousness that belied his age. "Mummy," he began hesitantly, his voice barely above a whisper, "am I really a prince?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp, cutting through the warmth of the room. Kate, taken aback, blinked in surprise. "Of course you are, darling," she replied gently, her voice soothing. But Louis did not seem convinced. His small hands fidgeted nervously, his gaze dropping to the floor. But Camilla said I might not be. She said I'm not really a royal. The words seemed to echo off the walls, their impact immediate and profound. William, who had been listening from across the room, straightened in his chair, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Kate, her hands now gripping Louis's shoulders, asked him to repeat what he had just said. Louis, with the innocence only a child could possess, simply nodded and reiterated his claim. Camilla said I'm not really a royal, he whispered again, his eyes brimming with confusion. For a moment, there was silence, thick, suffocating silence. The kind that fills the air when something truly earth-shattering has been revealed. Kate's face, usually so composed and graceful, had turned pale. William's hands had curled into fists, knuckles white against the fabric of his trousers. The fire crackled softly in the background, oblivious to the storm that had just been unleashed within those walls. What exactly did she say, Louis? William's voice was calm, measured, but there was an edge to it, a tightness that hinted at the fury simmering beneath the surface. Louis, sensing the tension, hesitated before replying. She said sometimes people aren't really what they seem. That sometimes people think they are something, but they're not. And then she looked at me and said, "Are you sure you're really a prince?" His voice wavered slightly, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. The room seemed to grow colder. Kate's eyes filled with tears, her hand reaching out to pull Louis closer. "You are a prince," she whispered fiercely, her voice trembling with emotion. "You are our prince. Never doubt that." Louis nodded slowly, his small arms wrapping around his mother in a tight embrace. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted, and with it, the fragile sense of security that had surrounded the young prince began to wither. William, his jaw clenched and eyes blazing, rose from his chair. "This will not stand," he declared, his voice low and unyielding. "Not in this family. Not ever." He left the room abruptly, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that sent a shiver through the room. Kate, still holding Louis tightly, whispered soothing words to her son, but her eyes remained fixed on the door, her mind racing with questions that now seemed impossible to ignore. The implications of Camilla's alleged statement were staggering. For her to suggest, even in passing, that Louis was not truly of royal blood was an accusation that cut to the very heart of the monarchy. Bloodlines, after all, were sacred within the royal family, an unbroken chain of lineage that had been preserved and protected for generations. To question that bond was to challenge the very fabric of the monarchy itself. Word of the incident spread quickly among the palace staff. Conversations were held in hushed tones behind closed doors, whispers of disbelief and speculation threading through the corridors of Kensington and Buckingham Palace alike. The idea that Queen Camilla, now the wife of King Charles III, would cast doubt on the legitimacy of William and Kate's youngest son was unthinkable. And yet, the whispers continued. In the days that followed, William and Kate retreated into a protective shell, surrounding themselves with trusted advisors and close friends. Meetings were held late into the night, discussions of damage control and strategic responses to what was quickly becoming a royal scandal. Kate, fiercely protective of her children, was adamant that the truth be revealed, that Louis's position in the line of succession be reaffirmed publicly. William, ever the diplomat, urged caution. Public acknowledgement, he argued, would only fan the flames of speculation. But Kate's resolve was unyielding. "I will not have my son questioned," she reportedly told her husband during one particularly heated exchange. Not by anyone, not even her. Camilla, meanwhile, remained curiously silent. Public appearances were limited, her usual schedule of charitable events and royal engagements abruptly scaled back. Palace insiders claimed she had been instructed to lie low, to avoid any media scrutiny until the matter was resolved. But the silence only served to fuel the rumors. Headlines began to circulate, questioning the stability of the monarchy and the integrity of its line of succession. "Royal scandal. Camilla questions Prince Louis's bloodline," screamed one tabloid. "A royal rift. Camilla versus the Cambridges," read another. The media frenzy was relentless, each new article adding another layer to the already combustible situation. Behind palace walls, the tension grew thicker. Advisors to King Charles III were summoned, their expertise required to navigate the growing crisis. Discussions of public statements, private reconciliations, and damage control were held in secret, away from prying eyes and curious ears. But despite the best efforts of palace officials, the story could not be contained. Public interest only grew, with citizens demanding answers and supporters of William and Kate calling for accountability. Prince Louis, unaware of the full magnitude of the situation, continued to play in the gardens of Kensington Palace, his laughter a sharp contrast to the turmoil brewing around him. But William and Kate knew that innocence would not protect him from the harsh realities of royal life. The seeds of doubt had been sown, and they would have to be uprooted before they took hold. It was a battle for legitimacy, for the future of their child, and for the very fabric of the royal family. Camilla's alleged words had sparked a firestorm, one that would not be easily extinguished. For William and Kate, it was a call to arms, a fight to protect their son from the shadows of doubt and the whispers of deceit. The events of that quiet evening at Kensington Palace had sent shockwaves through the royal household, but the true magnitude of Camilla's alleged words would only become apparent in the days that followed. For Prince Louis, the confusion lingered long after his confession to his parents. How could someone like Camilla, his grandmother by marriage, a figure who had been presented to him as part of his extended family, question something so intrinsic to his identity? For the young prince, it was a wound that no amount of comforting words from his parents could easily heal. According to sources close to the palace, Camilla's statement was far from a careless slip of the tongue. Those who claimed to have overheard her described a deliberate tone, almost calculating in its delivery. She had not simply posed a question, she had planted a seed of doubt, one that would inevitably grow in the young boy's mind. "Are you sure you're really a prince?" she had allegedly asked, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that belied her usual cordial demeanor. It was a question loaded with implication, a whisper of uncertainty in a world where bloodlines meant everything. Insiders who had been privy to Camilla's private conversations suggest that this was not the first time she had raised such doubts. In the weeks leading up to the incident, there had been rumors, quiet, almost imperceptible whispers, that Camilla had expressed concerns over the legitimacy of certain members of the royal family. While no names were ever mentioned directly, her conversations reportedly circled around the idea of purity and royal lineage, a concept she had allegedly emphasized more than once during private gatherings. To those who knew her best, this was not entirely out of character. Camilla, despite her public image as the doting grandmother and supportive consort, had always harbored a fascination with royal bloodlines. It was said that she took great pride in tracing her own ancestry back to aristocratic roots, often remarking on the importance of heritage and legacy during private dinners and family gatherings. Her obsession with tradition and lineage was well known among her inner circle, many of whom dismissed it as harmless pride. But in light of her alleged remarks to Prince Louis, that pride now seemed far more sinister. For William and Kate, the revelation was nothing short of devastating. Camilla's words, once whispered in passing, had now become a topic of fierce discussion behind palace walls. Meetings were held to address the situation, with senior aides and advisors called upon to assess the damage and strategize the best course of action. Some suggested quiet diplomacy, a private conversation between William and his stepmother to clear the air and smooth over any misunderstandings. Others, however, pushed for a more direct response, warning that leaving the accusation unaddressed could imply acceptance of its validity. Kate, who had always been known for her grace under pressure, reportedly struggled to contain her fury. Friends close to the Duchess described her as heartbroken and livid, barely able to speak of the incident without her voice shaking. Her primary concern, as always, was the well-being of her children. The idea that anyone, let alone a member of the family, would plant seeds of doubt in Louis's mind was incomprehensible to her. For Kate, this was not merely a matter of royal politics. It was a personal attack on her son's sense of identity and belonging. According to palace insiders, the tension between Kate and Camilla had been brewing for years, simmering beneath the surface of public appearances and carefully staged family gatherings. Their relationship, though cordial in public, had long been marked by differences in style and ideology. Where Kate was seen as modern and progressive, Camilla represented tradition and aristocratic heritage. These differences, while often downplayed by royal aides, had occasionally surfaced during private events, sparking disagreements over everything from child-rearing practices to the modernization of royal protocols. But this incident was different. This was not about minor disagreements or clashing ideologies. This was an affront to the very core of Kate's family. For Camilla to question Louis's legitimacy was to question Kate's role as his mother and William's role as his father. It was an insinuation that their family, carefully built and fiercely protected, was somehow less than authentic. The idea was not only offensive but also deeply wounding to a mother who had dedicated her life to shielding her children from the harsh glare of public scrutiny. The implications were far-reaching. Should Camilla's words be taken seriously, it would suggest that she harbored doubts about the legitimacy of the Cambridge line of succession. This would not only destabilize the immediate family, but also cast a shadow over the future of the monarchy itself. Prince Louis, as the youngest of William and Kate's children, was still years away from understanding the full weight of his royal heritage. Yet Camilla's remarks threatened to stain that legacy before it had even begun. Within days of Louis's confession, the palace was engulfed in whispers and speculation. Aides and staff members, many of whom had served the royal family for decades, found themselves caught between loyalty and disbelief. Some were quick to dismiss the rumors as mere gossip, an overblown misunderstanding between family members. Others, however, seemed less certain. The nature of the accusation, questioning the legitimacy of a young prince, was not something that could be easily dismissed. It was a charge that, if proven true, could send shockwaves through the monarchy. Camilla's camp, meanwhile, maintained a stoic silence. Public appearances continued as planned, and she carried out her royal duties with the same composure she had always exhibited. But those who observed her closely noted a change in her demeanor. Her smile seemed more restrained, her interactions more measured. It was as if she knew that eyes were upon her, watching for any sign of weakness or confirmation of the rumors that had taken root. Despite her attempts to project normalcy, the whispers only grew louder. Journalists began to dig deeper, prying into the history of the Cambridges and the events that had led to this explosive revelation. Questions were raised about Camilla's motivations. Why would she, at this stage in her life and reign, seek to undermine the legitimacy of William and Kate's children? Was it merely an offhand remark, or was it part of a deeper strategy to shift the balance of power within the royal family? Speculation ran rampant. Some suggested that Camilla, feeling her position within the family threatened by Kate's growing influence and popularity, had sought to destabilize her by casting doubt on her children's legitimacy. Others posited that it was simply a slip of the tongue, a careless comment that had been blown out of proportion. But for those closest to the situation, the incident was far too calculated to be dismissed as a mere accident. Behind closed doors, discussions grew increasingly heated. Advisors to King Charles III found themselves at a crossroads. How to address an accusation of this magnitude without causing irreparable harm to the family's image? To acknowledge the incident would be to validate the idea that there were legitimate doubts about Louis's bloodline, a move that could spark endless scrutiny. Yet to ignore it would risk appearing indifferent to the scandal, allowing speculation to fester unchecked. For William and Kate, the path forward was clear: protect their children at all costs. Publicly, they remained composed and steadfast, their appearances marked by grace and unity. But privately, friends noted a shift in their demeanor. William, typically measured and diplomatic, grew colder toward Camilla, his conversations with her reduced to curt exchanges and strained silences. Kate, always the model of restraint, reportedly refused to engage with Camilla directly, her interactions limited to what was necessary for public appearances. The palace, for its part, maintained its signature silence. Press releases were carefully worded, speaking only of unity and tradition, sidestepping the rumors entirely. But beneath the surface, the fractures had already formed, and the question lingered: would they ever truly heal? The news of Camilla's alleged words sent shockwaves through the royal corridors. For a family that thrived on image and tradition, this revelation was nothing short of an earthquake. Questioning the legitimacy of Prince Louis, even in private, was a scandal that reached far beyond personal squabbles. It cut directly to the heart of royal succession and the stability of the monarchy. The implications were staggering, and the response from within the palace was swift and severe. For Prince William and Kate, the alleged comments were a direct assault on their family. William, known for his composed demeanor and measured responses, was said to have been furious. Those close to him described a man barely able to contain his anger, pacing the halls of Kensington Palace with clenched fists and a tightened jaw. Kate, equally shaken, was reportedly seen in tears during a private family gathering. Insiders noted that she had always been fiercely protective of her children, and the idea that anyone, especially a senior royal, would question their place in the family was unimaginable. The couple wasted no time in addressing the matter. William, ever the diplomat, requested a private audience with his father, King Charles III. The meeting, held behind the gilded doors of Buckingham Palace, was described by insiders as tense and confrontational. William, whose respect for the monarchy had always been evident, did not mince words. He demanded answers and sought assurances that his children's place in the line of succession would never again be questioned. King Charles, caught between his son and his wife, reportedly listened intently, nodding at intervals but offering little in the way of concrete assurances. His position was delicate. On one side was his wife, Camilla, the woman he had fought to have accepted by the public and the monarchy alike. On the other side was his son and heir, whose trust and support were crucial to the stability of the royal line. To choose one over the other risked fracturing the family at its core, a prospect that Charles knew could have lasting repercussions. The conversation, according to those familiar with the matter, grew heated. William pressed for a public statement reaffirming the legitimacy of his children, a move he believed would quell the rumors and restore confidence in the line of succession. Charles, however, was hesitant. To address the matter publicly, he argued, would only give credence to the whispers. Silence, he maintained, had always been the crown's best defense. William disagreed. He saw the situation as an opportunity to assert his family's position and protect his children from further scrutiny. But Charles would not be moved. The meeting ended without resolution, leaving father and son at an impasse. Meanwhile, Kate took her own steps to address the situation. She reached out to trusted members of the royal staff, seeking support and reassurance. According to palace insiders, Kate expressed her disbelief and anger over Camilla's alleged comments, questioning what had motivated such a statement. Her concern was not only for Louis but for George and Charlotte as well. If Camilla could cast doubt on Louis, what was to stop her from doing the same with his siblings? The notion was both alarming and infuriating. Support for Kate within the palace walls grew swiftly. Staff members who had long admired her dedication to her children and her commitment to royal duties rallied around her. Quietly, conversations began to take place. Whispers of dissatisfaction with Camilla's behavior and murmurs of sympathy for Kate's plight. For many within the palace, this was not just a family dispute. It was a question of loyalty and integrity. Kate, never one to be idle, began working behind the scenes to strengthen her family's position. She reached out to key allies within the royal network, trusted friends, political figures, and longtime supporters of William. Her message was clear. Her children's legitimacy was unquestionable, and any attempt to undermine that truth would be met with fierce resistance. Her approach was calculated and strategic, a move that many saw as evidence of her growing influence within the monarchy. But it was not just William and Kate who reacted. The broader royal family found themselves drawn into the controversy, their loyalties tested by the growing divide. Princess Anne, known for her blunt demeanor and unwavering loyalty to the crown, reportedly voiced her support for William and Kate. During a private dinner with close family members, Anne was overheard saying that questioning a child's legitimacy was beneath the dignity of the crown, a statement that was seen as a clear rebuke of Camilla's alleged behavior. Prince Edward and Sophie, Countess of Wessex, also expressed their quiet support for the Cambridges. Though never once for the public eye, the couple had always maintained close ties with William and Kate. Their private expressions of solidarity did not go unnoticed. The ripple effect spread quickly, with members of the royal household aligning themselves in quiet support of the young family. Camilla, for her part, remained largely silent. Public appearances were limited, and when she did step out, her demeanor was markedly subdued. Gone were the wide smiles and confident waves. In their place was a woman who seemed acutely aware of the scrutiny she was under. Friends of Camilla suggested that she was shocked and hurt by the allegations, insisting that her words had been taken out of context. But palace insiders were less convinced. Some suggested that Camilla's remarks were part of a larger strategy, a subtle attempt to assert her own influence within the family hierarchy. Others believed it was a simple slip of the tongue, an ill-considered comment made in a moment of thoughtlessness. Publicly, the palace maintained its traditional silence. Statements released to the press spoke only of unity and family solidarity, sidestepping the controversy entirely. But behind the scenes, the lines had been drawn. Staffers whispered about the growing divide, and the tension during public appearances was palpable. William and Kate, while outwardly composed, kept a noticeable distance from Camilla, their interactions cordial but distant. The media, naturally, seized upon the story with fervor. Headlines speculated about the growing rift between the Cambridges and Camilla, questioning how the royal family would navigate such a sensitive issue. Polls began to surface, showing a sharp decline in public support for Camilla, while William and Kate's popularity remained steadfast. Public opinion seemed firmly in their favor, with many expressing outrage at the idea of questioning a child's legitimacy. Social media was ablaze with hashtags like #StandWithLewis and #ProtectThePrince, with thousands expressing their support for William and Kate's family. As the days stretched into weeks, the tension showed no signs of easing. Private meetings continued behind closed doors, and the whispers of discontent grew louder. For William and Kate, the path forward was clear: protect their children at all costs. For Camilla, the situation was more precarious. Her position as queen consort, once seen as unshakable, now appeared vulnerable, subject to the whispers and judgments of both palace insiders and the public at large. Behind the grand doors of Buckingham Palace and the secluded privacy of Kensington, a flurry of secret meetings unfolded. The shockwaves of Camilla's alleged statement had set off a chain reaction that could not be contained by mere denials or public silence. The stakes were too high, the implications too severe. The questioning of Prince Louis's bloodline was not merely a personal slight. It was a direct challenge to the stability of the royal line of succession. The first of these clandestine meetings was held just days after Prince Louis confided in his parents. William, determined to protect his family's legacy, had summoned his closest advisors to Kensington Palace. The room was filled with familiar faces, longtime aides, legal representatives, and trusted family friends, all sworn to secrecy. The gravity of the moment was not lost on anyone present. As they took their seats around the long, mahogany table, the tension was palpable. William wasted no time with pleasantries. His voice, typically measured and composed, carried a hard edge as he laid out the situation. He recounted Louis's confession in detail, his voice tightening as he described the alleged conversation with Camilla. "This isn't just about a careless remark," William insisted, his hands pressed firmly against the tabletop. "This is about questioning the legitimacy of my son, of my family. That cannot go unchallenged." His advisors listened intently, nodding in agreement. There were murmurs of disbelief, expressions of shock, and even a few clenched jaws. To question a child's place in the line of succession was not only disrespectful, it was dangerous. It opened the door for public speculation, for media scrutiny, and for endless conspiracy theories that could unravel the tightly woven fabric of royal tradition. Legal advisors were the first to speak. They outlined the legal implications of Camilla's alleged comments. Under the Royal Marriages Act of 1772 and the more recent Succession to the Crown Act of 2013, the line of succession was carefully documented and preserved. Any suggestion that Prince Louis was not a rightful heir could prompt investigations, media probes, and even parliamentary scrutiny. The last thing the monarchy needed was a question of legitimacy hanging over the head of a child destined to play a significant role in the family's future. The meeting stretched into the early hours of the morning, with voices rising and tempers flaring as strategies were debated. Some advisors suggested a swift and decisive public statement, one that would categorically reaffirm Louis's place in the line of succession and quash any rumors before they gained traction. Others, however, advised caution. A public declaration, they warned, might only serve to fan the flames, giving legitimacy to whispers that should have died quietly behind closed doors. William listened carefully, his gaze fixed and unyielding. He had always been known for his ability to navigate the murky waters of royal politics with poise, but this was different. This was personal. His son's very identity had been called into question, and the wound it had left was deep and raw. "We cannot let this go unanswered," he said finally, his voice firm with conviction. "Not this time." Meanwhile, across the city at Buckingham Palace, another meeting was underway. King Charles had summoned his own trusted circle, senior aides, political advisors, and legal experts, to discuss the growing tensions. The mood in the room was markedly different from that at Kensington. There was less outrage, more calculation. Charles, now settled into his role as monarch, understood the delicate balance of power within the family and the public eye. For him, this was not just a family dispute. It was a matter of public perception and political stability. The discussion was clinical and precise. Advisors outlined the potential repercussions of the scandal, public distrust, media frenzy, and questions of legitimacy that could stretch beyond Lewis to other members of the royal line. The group dissected Camilla's alleged remarks, analyzing them for legal vulnerabilities and potential fallout. Some suggested issuing a public statement of solidarity, a photograph of the family together, smiling and unified. Others recommended silence, a strategy the monarchy had employed successfully for centuries to weather scandal and controversy. But Charles was hesitant. Publicly addressing the matter would be an acknowledgement of its severity, a move that could backfire spectacularly if the media seized upon it. Yet to remain silent risked giving credence to the rumors. For Charles, the choice was stark: protect his wife's reputation or risk alienating his son and heir. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the room, unspoken but understood by all. The meetings continued over the course of several weeks, each one more secretive than the last. Attendance was limited strictly to those within the inner circle, and confidentiality was demanded at the highest levels. Documents were signed, pledges of silence taken. For the royal family, secrecy was survival. Any hint of discord, any whisper of disunity, would only serve to feed the media frenzy that had already begun to bubble beneath the surface. Back at Kensington, William and Kate were not idle. Kate, whose influence had grown significantly in recent years, began reaching out to key allies, figures within the political sphere, members of influential charities, and close family friends who could offer support. Her message was clear: the Cambridges stood united, and any attempt to undermine their family would be met with staunch resistance. The couple's public appearances took on new significance. Each event was carefully orchestrated to project unity and strength. William and Kate held hands more often, exchanged glances of solidarity, and spoke publicly of their commitment to family values and tradition. The press took note. Headlines began to shift from scandal to solidarity, with tabloids showcasing images of William and Kate attending public events with their children, all smiles and unity. The strategy was working. Public opinion, which had wavered in the initial wave of allegations, began to solidify in their favor. Social media was ablaze with support for the Cambridges, with hashtags like #StandWithLewis and #ProtectTheCambridges trending for days. But behind the smiles and public appearances, the tension remained. Camilla, still largely silent, continued with her public duties, but her presence was markedly less prominent. Gone were the grand events and high-profile appearances. Instead, her engagements were smaller, more private. Those close to her claimed she was deeply saddened by the allegations and maintained that her comments had been taken out of context. But the damage had been done. The whispers of discontent had already spread, and the palace's secret meetings only served to deepen the mystery. Within the royal circle, sides were being chosen. Senior royals were forced to navigate the delicate line between loyalty to the crown and allegiance to their personal beliefs. Some, like Princess and Prince Edward, were rumored to have expressed quiet support for William and Kate, their loyalty unwavering. Others remained neutral, choosing silence over solidarity, unwilling to wade into what was fast becoming one of the most divisive moments in recent royal history. For William and Kate, the path forward was clear: solidify their family's position, protect their children, and ensure that this whisper of doubt was extinguished before it could grow into a full-blown scandal. The secret meetings were just the beginning. What followed would be a carefully orchestrated campaign of public appearances, strategic alliances, and, if necessary, a confrontation with the very heart of the monarchy itself. The moment whispers of Camilla's alleged comments about Prince Louis reached the public, a firestorm erupted. What had been a closely guarded secret within the palace walls now spilled out into the open, igniting a media frenzy that stretched across continents. News outlets from London to New York plastered headlines with words like scandal, betrayal, and royal rift. The story, which initially began as a quiet rumor, quickly morphed into a full-blown crisis, threatening the fragile image of royal unity that Buckingham Palace had worked so diligently to maintain. For British tabloids, it was a feast. Front pages were splashed with bold titles: Camilla questions Louis's right to the throne, the Queen Consort's secret doubts, and royal line of succession thrown into chaos. Each day brought new revelations, as anonymous sources from within the palace continued to leak details of secret meetings, strained family gatherings, and hushed conversations between William and Kate. Columnists speculated on the potential fallout: what this meant for William's children, how it could affect the monarchy's future, and whether this would be the beginning of a significant shift in the royal power structure. The global media was no less ravenous. American news outlets seized upon the story with the same vigor as their British counterparts. Popular morning shows devoted entire segments to the scandal, inviting royal commentators and political analysts to dissect the implications of Camilla's alleged remarks. Headlines like "Royal Family in Crisis," "Camilla questions Louis's bloodline," and "Monarchy on shaky ground amidst scandal" flooded the airwaves. Even late-night talk show hosts joined the fray, weaving the controversy into monologues that blended humor with disbelief. Social media platforms, predictably, exploded. Twitter was awash with hashtags like #ProtectPrinceLouis, #RoyalScandal, and #CamillaGate. Supporters of William and Kate rallied online, posting messages of solidarity and calling for accountability. Images of Prince Louis, often shown laughing and playing with his siblings, were shared thousands of times alongside messages of encouragement. "A child's identity should never be questioned," one popular tweet read, receiving tens of thousands of likes and retweets. Instagram, too, was flooded with posts from royal enthusiasts and public figures expressing their shock and disbelief. Memes mocking Camilla's alleged comments began circulating widely, some portraying her as a meddling figure desperate to secure her own family's influence within the royal hierarchy. But not all reactions were sympathetic. A vocal minority of royal traditionalists took to social media to voice their support for Camilla, accusing the media of inflating a private family matter into a full-blown scandal. They argued that the line of succession had always been a matter of great importance and that Camilla, as the queen consort, had a right to ensure that it remained untarnished. Some even suggested that Camilla's alleged comments, though harsh, might have been grounded in legitimate concerns. This narrative, though far less popular, found its echo in certain conservative publications, which ran editorials questioning whether the incident had been exaggerated for political gain. As the days wore on, the palace's silence grew increasingly conspicuous. Buckingham Palace issued only a single, carefully worded statement: "The royal family remains united in its commitment to service and tradition. Matters of family are handled privately, with the respect and dignity they deserve." The vague and somewhat sterile response did little to quell public curiosity. In fact, it seemed only to fuel speculation. What was the palace hiding? Why was there no outright denial of Camilla's alleged words? The questions grew louder, and the pressure mounted. Palace insiders hinted at growing unrest behind closed doors. Some claimed that William had been pushing for a more direct response, a public affirmation of his children's place in the line of succession. Others suggested that King Charles, ever cautious and deeply concerned about the monarchy's image, had insisted on maintaining silence to avoid escalating the situation further. The tension between father and son was now a matter of public discourse, dissected by journalists and royal commentators alike. Public opinion began to solidify. Polls conducted by major news outlets revealed a stark decline in Camilla's favorability ratings, while William and Kate remained steadfastly popular. A survey by YouGov showed that nearly 70% of respondents believed that Prince Louis should be publicly affirmed as a rightful heir, while 60% expressed concerns over Camilla's alleged influence within the family. "She's been meddling since day one," remarked one respondent in a televised interview. "First, it was Diana, and now it's Kate's children. Enough is enough." The outcry grew louder with each passing day. Demonstrations, though small, began cropping up outside Buckingham Palace. Protesters held signs demanding transparency and accountability from the royal family. "Hands off Prince Louis," read one banner. Another, painted in bold red letters, declared, "Protect the Cambridge line." The scenes were reminiscent of earlier royal protests, moments when public opinion had forced the monarchy to confront its mistakes head-on. For William and Kate, the spectacle was both affirming and deeply unsettling. On one hand, the public's overwhelming support for their family was a testament to their popularity and the goodwill they had cultivated over the years. On the other, it represented a threat to the fragile unity of the royal family. To be openly at odds with Camilla, now queen consort, was to risk a public schism that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Behind the scenes, Kate was said to be working tirelessly to control the narrative. She reached out to key media contacts, ensuring that stories focused on her family's unity and resilience in the face of adversity. Her public appearances took on a strategic edge, each outing meticulously planned to project an image of grace and solidarity. She was seen laughing with her children at charity events, holding William's hand during public engagements, and greeting well-wishers with a smile that spoke of quiet strength. The message was clear. The Cambridges were united, unshaken by the storm swirling around them. Camilla, by contrast, appeared less frequently. Her appearances were marked by a noticeable lack of enthusiasm from the crowds, with some onlookers even turning their backs as her motorcade passed. The press was unforgiving, with headlines pointing out the lack of cheers and the occasional jeers that accompanied her public outings. For Camilla, the fallout was swift and brutal, a stark reminder of the fragility of public opinion. The pressure eventually grew too great to ignore. Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles and Camilla would embark on a series of goodwill tours throughout the UK, a clear attempt to rehabilitate her image and reassert the monarchy's unity. Public events were scheduled, interviews were arranged, and photographers were invited to capture moments of familial harmony. But the damage had been done. The question of Prince Louis's legitimacy had taken root in the public consciousness, and no amount of carefully staged photo opportunities could easily erase it. As the media continued its relentless coverage, questions began to emerge about what the future held for the monarchy. Would this scandal lead to a deeper divide within the royal family? Could William and Kate find a way to coexist peacefully with Camilla after such a blatant affront? And most importantly, would Prince Louis grow up under the shadow of doubt cast by his own family? The answers were unclear, but one thing was certain. The media storm was far from over, and the repercussions were only just beginning to unfold. As the media frenzy escalated and the whispers of scandal grew louder, there was one voice notably absent from the conversation: Camilla's. The Queen Consort had maintained a stoic silence throughout the controversy, her public appearances sparse and carefully managed. For weeks, she had weathered the storm with the quiet dignity expected of a royal, but insiders knew that the pressure to respond was mounting. Speculation began to swirl. Would Camilla break her silence, or would the palace continue its policy of restraint and silence? The answer came during an unannounced visit to a charity event in rural Gloucestershire. Camilla, dressed in muted tones and flanked by her closest aides, greeted community leaders with her usual grace. It was a small gathering, far from the glare of London's paparazzi, but the press had been tipped off, and a handful of reporters were waiting outside the gates. As Camilla exited the event, a reporter shouted from across the courtyard, "Your Majesty, do you have anything to say about Prince Louis?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. For a moment, Camilla paused. The silence stretched, and photographers raised their cameras, ready to capture whatever might come next. Her aides exchanged quick glances, their expressions tense. Finally, she turned to face the reporters, her expression calm but resolute. "There are always rumors," she began, her voice measured and deliberate. "But family is family. I love all of my grandchildren equally, and that includes Prince Louis." It was a carefully crafted statement, vague yet pointed, offering neither a confirmation nor a denial of the rumors swirling around her. The media seized upon her words with a frenzy. Headlines splashed across newspapers the next morning. Camilla speaks out, denies rift with Louis, Queen Consort breaks silence on scandal, and family is family. But is that enough? Analysts dissected her statement with relentless scrutiny, parsing each word for hidden meaning. Was this an olive branch or a deflection? Did her choice of words imply reconciliation, or was it a carefully veiled dismissal of the allegations against her? Privately, those close to Camilla claimed that she had been deeply hurt by the accusations. Friends and confidants described her as shocked and devastated by the media's portrayal of her as a villainous stepmother. One source close to the Queen Consort insisted that her remarks to Prince Louis had been taken wildly out of context. According to this insider, the conversation had been lighthearted, a playful jest that had been misinterpreted by the young prince. It was never meant to be malicious, the source explained. Camilla adores those children. This whole thing has been blown completely out of proportion. But not everyone was convinced. Within palace walls, whispers of skepticism lingered. Aides and staff who had long observed the delicate dance of power between the Cambridges and Camilla raised quiet concerns. Some speculated that Camilla's comments, whether playful or not, reflected deeper insecurities about her position within the royal family. After all, Camilla's path to becoming Queen Consort had been fraught with controversy, her acceptance into the royal fold anything but smooth. Her ascension, some suggested, had always been shadowed by doubts about her legitimacy in the eyes of the public. Could it be that these insecurities had manifested in a moment of poor judgment with Prince Louis? Others theorized that Camilla's words were less about personal insecurity and more about palace politics. With King Charles now on the throne, the dynamics of power within the family had shifted. Camilla, now elevated to queen consort, wielded unprecedented influence. Some suggested that her remarks were a calculated move, a subtle assertion of dominance, a reminder to the Cambridges of her elevated status. If true, it would signify a dangerous game of power within the royal family, one that threatened to fracture its unity from within. The queen consort's camp, however, was quick to shut down such speculation. Publicly, her aides issued carefully worded statements emphasizing her dedication to family and unity. Her Majesty the Queen Consort is committed to her role as a unifier within the family, one statement read. Any suggestion to the contrary is purely speculative and without merit. The message was clear: Camilla would not be painted as the antagonist in this royal drama. But the public's response was less forgiving. Social media platforms were ablaze with criticism, many questioning the sincerity of her statements. Family is family? Then why question a child's place in it? Read one viral tweet. Instagram posts circulated with side-by-side images of Camilla and Louis, captioned with phrases like innocence versus ambition. The narrative, it seemed, had been set. For many, Camilla was the instigator, the one who had dared to question the bloodline of a young boy who had done nothing to deserve such scrutiny. The backlash did not go unnoticed within Buckingham Palace. Aides close to King Charles reportedly urged Camilla to take further steps to mend fences with William and Kate. One suggestion included a public appearance with Prince Louis, an opportunity to display unity and quash rumors of discord. But the idea was swiftly rejected. According to palace insiders, Camilla felt that such an appearance would only serve to legitimize the rumors, casting further doubt upon her intentions. Instead, Camilla chose a different path, one that involved a series of private meetings with key members of the royal family. It began with a quiet luncheon with Princess Anne, whose loyalty to the crown had never wavered. Though the details of their conversation remained secret, insiders described it as tense but productive. And, known for her bluntness, reportedly spoke candidly with Camilla about the impact of her alleged remarks. It was a difficult conversation, one that left both women visibly shaken, but it was also seen as a necessary step toward reconciliation. This was followed by a private tea with Sophie, Countess of Wessex, another key ally within the royal circle. The meeting, held away from the prying eyes of the press, was described by those close to Sophie as a chance for reflection and understanding. Camilla reportedly expressed her regret over the misunderstanding, assuring Sophie of her commitment to family unity. Sophie, known for her diplomatic nature, listened attentively, offering her support and encouragement. Despite these efforts, the public's perception remained largely unmoved. Polls continued to show a decline in Camilla's popularity, and her appearances were often met with lukewarm receptions. For the first time since her ascension to queen consort, Camilla found herself grappling with genuine public dissent. Her every word, every gesture, was scrutinized with a sharpness that had not been present before. And though she maintained her public composure, insiders whispered of growing frustration and isolation behind palace doors. As the controversy surrounding Camilla's alleged remarks grew, so too did the questions about the royal line of succession. For centuries, the British monarchy had thrived on tradition and unyielding principles of inheritance. Bloodlines were sacred, protected with the utmost vigilance to ensure that the crown would always pass to a rightful heir. Now, with whispers of Prince Louis's legitimacy circling through both palace walls and the public sphere, those principles were being tested like never before. The issue of succession is not merely ceremonial, it is deeply enshrined in British law. The Act of Settlement of 1701 established that only Protestant descendants of Sophia of Hanover could inherit the throne, a rule that was later adjusted but still remains deeply intertwined with questions of legitimacy and bloodline. For Camilla to cast doubt on Louis's place in that line was to challenge the very structure of the monarchy itself. As the scandal gained traction, constitutional experts began weighing in on the implications. Interviews with legal scholars and historians were broadcast on major news outlets, each of them dissecting the potential fallout of Camilla's alleged comments. Some argued that if there were even a sliver of truth to the doubts she had cast, it could provoke a constitutional crisis. The line of succession is ironclad, explained one constitutional expert during a primetime news interview. If that is called into question, it isn't just a family matter, it's a matter of state. Parliament members were quietly briefed on the situation as well. While there was no official investigation, whispers of concern circulated through the halls of Westminster. Questions were raised about the palace's silence on the matter and whether an official statement would be required to reaffirm Prince Louis's place in the line of succession. Some MPs even suggested that an inquiry might be necessary to quell public concerns and restore confidence in the royal family's integrity. Public opinion, meanwhile, remained fervently in favor of Prince Louis. Polls indicated overwhelming support for William and Kate, with nearly 3/4 of respondents expressing belief in their children's legitimacy. Social media campaigns, led by royal supporters and advocacy groups, called for an official declaration from Buckingham Palace to put the rumors to rest. Protect the line, read one popular hashtag, while another, #LouisIsRoyal, trended for days across multiple platforms. Within Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Meetings were held behind closed doors, with advisors to King Charles discussing strategies to manage the situation. Some advocated for a public declaration that would reaffirm Louis's status and silence the whispers once and for all. Others advised caution, warning that any official statement would only serve to legitimize the rumors further. Charles, known for his reluctance to engage in public confrontations, seemed to side with the latter group, opting for silence in hopes that the controversy would fade with time. But silence, as it turned out, only fueled the fire. Royal biographers began revisiting the history of the royal line, drawing comparisons to past controversies. One particularly notorious example was the so-called Lost Prince, John of the House of Windsor, whose epilepsy and developmental issues had been kept hidden from public view for most of his life. Speculation grew about other instances where the legitimacy of heirs had been questioned, igniting discussions about the monarchy's long-standing tradition of secrecy. Amidst the speculation, rumors began to circulate of private DNA testing. Unconfirmed reports suggested that William, determined to protect his family, had quietly ordered tests to definitively prove Louis's legitimacy. These rumors were neither confirmed nor denied by the palace, leaving room for wild speculation in the tabloids. Some publications claimed that the tests had been conducted in secret, with results locked away in a vault beneath Buckingham Palace. Others suggested that William was prepared to go public with the results if Camilla continued to cast doubt on his son. For Camilla, the pressure was mounting. Her public appearances grew less frequent, and when she did step out, the reception was often lukewarm. Crowds that had once greeted her with polite applause now offered restrained nods and whispers. Photographers captured images of her looking strained and weary, her smiles forced, and her interactions with the public notably brief. The Queen Consort, once seen as a symbol of resilience and loyalty to Charles, now found herself the focal point of royal controversy. Behind the scenes, Camilla reportedly met with key figures within the royal family in an attempt to smooth things over. Private luncheons were arranged with Princess and Prince Edward, both of whom maintained neutral stances publicly but were rumored to be deeply concerned about the growing rift. According to insiders, the meetings were tense but civil, with discussions centering around unity and moving forward as a family. But for William and Kate, the damage was already done. To question the legitimacy of their son was to cross a line that could not easily be redrawn. Legal experts weighed in on the implications of the controversy, particularly if the rumors continued to escalate. If the legitimacy of Prince Louis were to be publicly called into question, it could theoretically open the door to a parliamentary inquiry, an unprecedented move that would thrust the royal family into political scrutiny. Such a step, though unlikely, was not entirely impossible. The royal line of succession, after all, was more than just a family tree. It was a constitutional matter, one that was deeply intertwined with the governance of the United Kingdom. Amidst the chaos, William and Kate made a strategic decision. In an attempt to quiet the whispers, they began to make more public appearances with Louis, George, and Charlotte. Carefully staged photographs were released to the press, depicting the family laughing and playing together in the gardens of Kensington Palace. The message was clear: their family was strong, united, and unshaken by the rumors that had plagued them. Public support surged as images of Louis smiling with his siblings went viral. The young prince, seemingly unaware of the storm surrounding him, became a symbol of innocence in the face of royal drama. But while William and Kate pushed forward with their campaign of unity, the question of succession remained. Legal scholars continued to debate the matter on news programs and political talk shows, analyzing centuries of royal protocol and precedents. For many, the silence from Buckingham Palace was a glaring omission, an unspoken acknowledgement that the rumors, however baseless, had cast a shadow over the line of succession. In response to growing pressure, the palace announced that the royal family would embark on a series of goodwill tours across the United Kingdom. The tours, designed to project unity and resilience, were seen as an effort to distract from the controversy and restore confidence in the monarchy. Camilla, notably, was scheduled for several high-profile appearances alongside King Charles, a move widely interpreted as an attempt to rehabilitate her image. Still, the whispers persisted. Questions lingered about what exactly had transpired between Camilla and Louis that day, and whether there was any truth to her alleged remarks. For the monarchy, it was a critical moment, one that would either solidify their legacy or reveal the cracks beneath the polished surface of royal tradition. The days that followed the explosive allegations against Camilla were marked by a distinct shift in strategy for William and Kate. Up until that point, their approach had been largely reactive, quietly managing the fallout and relying on palace aides to issue carefully worded statements. But the questioning of Prince Louis's legitimacy had struck a nerve too deep to ignore. For William and Kate, it was no longer a matter of managing public perception, it was about defending their family. Behind the gates of Kensington Palace, a series of high-level meetings unfolded. William and Kate summoned their most trusted advisors, as well as key figures within their charitable organizations and public relations teams. The tone of these meetings was starkly different from the cautious, measured discussions that had characterized their responses in the past. This time, there was a clear sense of urgency, a need to act decisively and forcefully. William, whose public persona had always been defined by diplomacy and restraint, was uncharacteristically adamant. According to those present, he expressed his frustration openly, describing the allegations against his son as both baseless and malicious. He spoke at length about the need to protect his children, not just from the scrutiny of the media, but from the whispers within the palace walls that threatened to undermine their sense of belonging. "This is my family," he reportedly told his advisors, his voice steady but firm. "And I will not have them questioned. Not by anyone." Kate, typically known for her quiet strength and composed demeanor, was equally resolute. Insiders described her as steely during the discussions, her focus entirely on restoring the public's confidence in her family. Kate was adamant that any shadow cast over her children be dispelled publicly and unequivocally. For her, the scandal was not merely an attack on Louis's legitimacy, it was a challenge to her role as a mother and a protector of her children. The first step in their counteroffensive was a carefully orchestrated public appearance. William and Kate, alongside Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, made a surprise visit to a local children's charity. The event, covered extensively by the media, was marked by warmth and unity. Photographs of the family laughing, playing, and interacting with children flooded social media platforms, drawing praise and admiration from supporters around the world. Headlines praised the Cambridges for their grace under pressure, with one tabloid declaring, "Unbreakable. William and Kate stand strong amidst royal turmoil." The event was followed by a series of strategic media appearances. William gave a rare, exclusive interview with the BBC, where he addressed the rumors head-on. "My children are my pride and joy," he said confidently, his gaze unwavering. "They are part of this family, part of this country, and nothing will ever change that." His words were direct and unyielding, a clear message to those who had questioned his son's legitimacy. Public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Viewers took to social media to express their support, with many applauding William's directness and strength. Kate, too, took on a more public role. In a speech delivered at a fundraising event for children's mental health, a cause she had championed for years, she spoke of the importance of family and unity. Her words, though general in nature, carried an unmistakable subtext. "Our children are the heart of our families," she said, her voice steady and clear. "They deserve to feel safe, loved, and unquestioned in their place." The audience erupted in applause, and news outlets quickly picked up on the significance of her message. But the public displays of unity were only part of the strategy. Behind the scenes, William and Kate began to consolidate their influence within the palace. Meetings were held with senior advisors to King Charles, where William reportedly demanded reassurances that his children's place in the line of succession would be publicly affirmed. The conversations were said to be tense, with William pressing for a stronger statement of support from Buckingham Palace and Charles insisting that maintaining silence was the best course of action. The tension between father and son grew palpable. Charles, known for his cautious approach and desire to avoid confrontation, was reportedly reluctant to take a firm public stance. He argued that acknowledging the rumors would only legitimize them, potentially sparking further controversy.